this.
Counter hits. Counter hits. Did I not say counter hits? Josie Rizal is the queen of counter hits in Tekken 7. It can honestly feel like she has an infinite amount of choices when it comes to the amount of counter hits that she has. She also has a lot of diversity with her counter hit options, and we're going to talk about some of those options right now. Okay, about to start my Tekken 7 Josie Rizal Beginner's Guide. This will be very similar to my 𝐂𝐈𝐓𝐇 Beginner's Guide, except there will be a heavy focus, or actually not a heavy focus, the complete focus on key moves that have strong counter hit properties. And if you don't know how counter hit works at a high level, basically it's when you land your attack during your opponent's active frames of their attack, okay, and versus just landing attack in general, that will trigger counter hit properties. And some characters have things like counter hit launchers, or you get more plus frames or something like that. So it's a little different than the beginner's guide of my 𝐂𝐈𝐓𝐇. That being said, I'm not covering all of her counter hit moves. Josie has way too many counter hit moves. I'm going to cover some of the key counter hit moves that I think are good for her and good for beginners. And if it is a counter hit move associated with, for example, her switch stance or strengths enter into her crouch dash moves, I'm not going to cover that, because if this guide does well, I will probably make another guide or two going over her switch stance as well as her crouch dash moves and things like that. Starting off with Josie's Magic 4, where Magic 4s are probably the most common counter hit tools in the game. Her standing 4 is a high attack that comes out in 12 frames. It is -7 on block, so completely safe on block, +6 on hit, and of course, if being a Magic 4 means it is also a counter hit launcher. Now, it being a high means susceptible to being duck and launch, and it's very linear, so you have to be careful about that. Your opponent can easily step this to both sides. Now, this is your fastest counter hit launcher, and you can use that as an interrupt tool. So in cases where you're playing opponents like I'm showing you on the screen here, and there's a big enough gap in their string, you can use her Magic 4 to get a launcher and interrupt that string. Very effective. It just requires a little character knowledge. Another two ways I like to use this is that off of her jab on block, which is +1, and her down 4 on hit, which is also +1. In both of those cases, your opponent has to be aware. A lot of lows in the game are negative on hit, and most things you do on block are negative on block, so you can use both of those to set up her Magic 4, because you're collecting plus frames, and it will make your Magic 4 effectively come out in 𝐼11 relative to your opponent versus 𝐼12. Forward 4 is a mid attack that comes out in 16 frames, which is approximately about 17 and 18 with the forward notation. It is -9 on block, so safe on block. On hit, it knocks down, and on counter hit, it is a counter hit launcher, which you guys are going to hear me say that a lot, but a lot of these moves. Now, this is your primary homing move. This is what I suggest you go for when you have an opponent that is stepping or sidewalking a lot. All right, a few ways to set this up, particularly off opponents that actually like to mash. Going off her back 1-1, which shouldn't be crazy hard to get because it's an 𝐼11 Punisher. That is +16 on hit, very crazy frames on hit. And if your opponent presses anything after that, you shouldn't have any problem with the 4-4-4 counter hit launcher. Same thing with her back 3. That's not 𝐼11, but it is +13 on hit. And again, pretty much a frame trap for 4-4-4, so your opponent needs to basically just block. Now, coming off her CD3, this is not a frame trap. That's only +4 on hit. So your opponent can't interrupt the 4-4-4. But what happens is a lot of people, when you land the CD3, they go into the down 4-4, and your opponent will actually step that, or at least a good opponent may try to step that. So 4-4-4 is homing, so that's actually a good way to catch your opponent for that. Now, 4-4-4 is also a decent spacing move, okay? So if you're good at spacing your opponent, this is another way to try to set up the counter hit launch. And as long as you don't whiff it, if you just land it on block, remember it is -9 on block, so at least it is still safe on block. 3+4 is a mid attack that is 16 frames. It is -7 on block, so completely safe on block. Has a little bit of pushback on block as well. It knocks down on hit, and of course, this is another counter hit launcher. Now, this attack is weak to sidestep right, so be careful if you see your opponent moving to the right. This is also a knee, so most reversals and parries in the game will not work on this. And because of the pushback, if you actually have some good movement, maybe it'll cause your opponent to whiff, and then you get a whiff punish. Now, the two ways I normally use this is one off of Josie's classic 1-2-2, which is +9 on hit. So this is a frame trap, and you'll see a lot of people go for this when they first start using Josie, and it works for a while, and then people catch on, which is obviously the way it works. You know, people get smarter. The other way is what you see Jimmy J Tran doing with Brian. You know, he's checking with the jab, and then he's doing Brian's knee, and that's also 16 frames. So the setup is very similar, okay? You basically check with the jab, where that's on hit on block +1, on hit +8, and then you follow with the 4-3+4 to actually get the counter hit set up. Down back 2 is a 20 frame mid, so definitely on the slower side. It is -10 on block, knocks down on hit, and it's also another counter hit launcher. Now there are 2 core weaknesses I want to talk about this move. First and foremost, this move is the first move I'll talk about that is unsafe on block. Only at -10, but still unsafe. So be careful if you're playing a character that has a powerful 10 frame punisher. This move is also extremely linear. You can easily step it to the left as well as step it to the right. Now down back 2 has a built-in defense in the fact that it actually tech crouches, okay? So it means it enters crouch status and it goes under high attack. And that's good for a couple of reasons, okay? First reason is that, say for example, you're playing a Lydia and she goes into her second stance. You just do a hard read and you go for down back 2. So in that case, you'll get the counter hit launch. But for whatever reason, you react to it and you choose to use down back 2. And luckily for you, she went for a high attack. So you don't get the counter hit launch, you get the punish because you went underneath the attack and hit it in recovery frames, right? Now, say for example, I like to set this off of back 1 once and I get the +16, right? Now the good thing about this is that it's not technically uninterruptible because it's +16 and this is 20 frames, but for your opponent to beat you out, they need to either sidestep it or they need to do a fast mid attack. If they try to interrupt this with a high attack, it tech crouches and it will go under the high. So just add more layers of defense for your opponent to think about when they're actually trying to deal with this move. Down 2 is a mid attack that comes out in 20 frames, so still on the slower side like down back 2. It is -2 on block, +3 on hit, and forces crouch. So very nice frames on block and on hit. It is also a counter hit launcher, and if you continue to hold down, you enter into the crouch position. And the cool thing here is you can pick up the combo whether you continue to hold down or not, so that's actually really nice. It is also very weak to sidestep left, so be careful about that. It is an elbow, so just like 4, 3+4, which is a knee, most parries and reversal will not work on this move, okay? Now that is most. There are characters that will be able to reverse this. Now I like to set this up off of back 1-1, which is a common thing you hear because the plus frames are just so great. But back 1-1, I repeat again, is an 𝐼11 move, so this is your 𝐼11 block punisher. So you should be able to actually land that in a lot of situations. So as long as you're locking your opponent down with homing moves so that they're not stepping down too, that is a pretty good follow-up option right there. Back 2 is a high attack that comes out in 14 frames and it is +1 on block. So kind of how I was talking about the jab is +1 on block and down 4 is +1 on hit to set up your magic 4. You can use this as well to set up your magic 4. And it's +7 on hit. So again, good frames on hit to set up other counter hit attacks. And on counter hit, it's not a launcher, it's a counter hit throw, but it gives you some really nice 𝐂𝐬𝐍𝐄𝐄𝐓. Now it is a high, so it can be duck and launch, and this is also weak to sidestep right. Since back 2 is decently fast at I-14, I kind of like to use the magic 4 setups for this, but I'm going to reiterate again how powerful the jab is for pretty much every character in Tekken. It's +1 on block, +8 on hit. Just a very powerful tool, especially for a character like Josie, who's a counter hit based character. So that's typically how I like to set up the back 2. But you can also do like down 4 on hit, +1 in the back 2. You can do back 2 into back 2 because again, back 2 is + on block as well as +7 on hit. While standing 1 is a mid attack that comes out in 13 frames, so pretty fast. It is -4 on block, so completely safe on block. It is +7 on hit, good frames on hit. And on counter hit, it is +14 for a guaranteed follow-up, so really nice frames on counter hit. It is also weak to sidestep left, so be careful if your opponent's moving to the left. The range is not the best. If you need good range from a while standing attack, I suggest doing while standing 3. This is also a counter hit launcher as well. Now the 2 ways I want to show you how to land this is one coming off of the down 2, because the down 2 is +3 and forces crouch. If you come up with the while standing 1, a lot of times you will catch your opponent if they're trying to attack you, and then you get the counter hit. You can follow it with her forward 1+2, which is a 14 frame move and then a mini combo. And if you have rage, you can follow for actually a big combo for some really nice damage. The other way I like to do this is to try to interrupt your opponent with a string that has a high attack in the middle of the string. This requires some form of knowledge, of course, but in this particular way, you can interrupt it, get the counter hit, get the forward 1+2, and then get the mini combo, which is basically combo damage. If it's a high ender at the end of the string, then typically you would just get a punish, and in that case you should probably do while standing 2-1 and then get the little mini follow-up combo for that. Was actually a real combo, not a follow-up combo. But if you do the while standing 1 and it's a high ender, that's in recovery, so it's not going to really get you to counter hit. So in that case, I do while standing 2-1. Now she has other moves that have strong counter hit properties. I'm showing you on the screen right here. She has other strings that have strong counter hit property enders. I did not cover everything. She has a lot. I meant it when I said she's like the queen of counter hits for Tekken 7. But this does end my Josie Rizal beginner's guide, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to actually make. If you guys like this content, please consider liking and subscribing. All support, as I always say, is very much appreciated. You guys like Dead by Daylight or Mortal Kombat, please consider checking me out on Instagram or just some of my other social media platforms. I'm trying to grow there as well. This is Acidlite. You guys take care.